Welcome to Think Bigger Voices, hosted by Jennie Treby and co-produced by Tony DiBenedetto. We're on a mission to break the cycle of poverty for kids in America by inspiring education, advocacy, and action in our communities. We'll tackle big subjects, talk to the experts, and promote the solutions making an impact. Join us if you believe that every kid deserves the opportunity to think bigger.
Hi, I'm Jennie Treby. Thank you for joining us today. I'm so excited to introduce our guest, Mr. Freddy Williams. Freddy is the president and CEO of both the Suncoast Boys and Girls Clubs and the Tampa Bay Boys and Girls Club. Together, those organizations provide after-school services to over 2,500 kids in 36 locations. Boys and Girls Club also provides additional programming to 30,000 kids throughout the school year. I'm so excited to welcome Freddy.
Hi, happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. Start off by telling us a little bit about you and your role at Boys and Girls Clubs.
Yeah, so first and foremost, I'm a proud Boys and Girls Club alumni. The Boys and Girls Club made a huge difference in my life, and oftentimes credit the Boys and Girls Club for saving my life. And it's one of the greatest honors and privilege to have an opportunity to serve in a leadership capacity in an organization that was so meaningful in my life. I had a short career in politics and eventually got into work as a professional staff as a Boys and Girls Club. Just celebrated 16 years as a professional, and they say time flies when you're having fun, and it certainly is the essence of it.
So, Freddy, you also serve as the chair of the Boys and Girls Club Professional Association nationally. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so, as a young person, I've always grown that when I see an issue, just don't sit on the sidelines, be part of the solution. And as a national movement in Boys and Girls Club, we have more than 70,000 employees, over 120,000 volunteers across the country that are providing services to 4.5 million kids. And understanding that the work that we do is deeply meaningful for me, I was concerned that we weren't preparing the next generation of leaders to continue on and grow to meet the unmet demand for services for young people. So I raised my hand and said, I want to get involved. And I joined every committee that Boys and Girls Clubs America had, every planning committee, and was vocal and used my voice for good, but also put my action into my words into action. So I was elected by my peers, the local professionals, onto the national board in 2019, and really dug in from there and found ways that I was in a position of influence to make a difference. And 3 years later, after signing up for every committee between rewriting our bylaws and charters and board development and the financials, the board of directors elected me as the chair of the board for our national board for the Professional Association. And it's been a great honor, being an advocate for the work that we do, being the voice for the work that we do, but also being able to see around corners of what's happening nationally and bring those insights back here locally to better position the Tampa Bay market for success for young people. So my term ends at the end of December. It's been a 2-year term, and it's been a great experience for me to be stretched as a leader. I've met some incredible leaders across the country. I was at ground zero in helping redefine our new strategic direction in Boys and Girls Clubs of America. And we're now planning out to 2050 into what we're doing, and having the ability to be front row of that has been a great honor. And now I get a chance after my term is over with as a chair. I'll still serve on the board, but I can really get to work in the local communities of setting the benchmark for excellence, creating a blueprint for other local chapters across the country to realize opportunities for young people.
That's incredible. So you were a Boys and Girls Club kid.
I was.
So tell us about how you credit that for saving your life.
Yeah, so one summer, a group of my friends and I got in trouble, and the police said we had two options. You're going to spend the rest of the summer in jail. They called it the boot camp, sheriff boot camps, when I was a kid. Or we could spend the rest of the summer in a Boys and Girls Club, and that was a no-brainer for us.
Right.
And so we went to the programs during the summertime, did our community service there. But the club director said, we know you guys are good kids. You've never been in trouble with the law, and if you can stay out of trouble and you keep working hard, we're going to give you a free membership to the Boys and Girls Club. And not in understanding how our youth development process worked and how our strategy worked, I said, I can be in all these programs and go on field trips. It doesn't cost anything, and all I got to do is stay out of trouble. And they were able to give me my free membership. And had I not had that introduction, would not have had access to the programs and support and mentorship that helped me. And when I say it saved my life in a literal sense of keeping me out of jail, also in a figurative sense, because I was told I wasn't going to graduate from high school. And it was because of the Boys and Girls Club who said that they saw something in me I didn't see in myself, saw something in me that the school district didn't see in me, and were able to invest in me and give me the support that I needed to help me graduate from high school and have a plan for the future, which was slightly misguided because I earlier worked in politics and I thought that's what I wanted to do because I wanted to have good change in the world, but quickly saw that I can have change in the world as a practitioner in youth development.
Wow, that's quite a story. So what happened after you graduated from high school then? So how long did it take you to kind of transition into the Boys and Girls Clubs back? What made you come back to that?
Yeah, so when I attended the Boys and Girls Club, one of the things that got me was field trips. And one summer, our field trips were taken away, and I asked the club director, why can't we go on field trips? This is what kids come to the Boys and Girls Club for. And they said, well, the funding was cut. And as a high schooler, I didn't really understand what that meant. But he was able to walk me through, we call it disguised learning now, of what we learned in civics classes and how the legislative process and how funding was cut. And I said, when I grow up, I want to make sure funding is never cut from kids because this isn't right. Politicians have no idea what it's really like to being a kid. They're so disillusioned. He said, well, if you want to do that, you probably want to be a lobbyist. I said, well, sign me up. And so they said, you're probably going to want to study politics, go to law school, and get into lobbying that way. So I went to school, studied politics, joined the board of the Boys and Girls Club out of college, and thinking if I could help politicians raise money and get elected, I could certainly help kids. And this is after the 2008 election. We were in between campaigns, heading into the Great Recession. The clubs were having a tough time, and they asked me to come on a temporary basis. And I did that. I told the club I would give them 2 years. And I found my calling, found my purpose, and I have not looked back since.
That's fantastic. What a journey. It's funny because it sounds like you were a little bit of a handful there for a little bit in high school. And I read about you, and there's a quote that you said that you were told the best advice you ever received was that my mouth was either going to get me in trouble or do good in the world.
Yeah. So I was always known to try to express my thoughts and opinion in an authentic way. And part of reason why I wasn't going to graduate from high school is because I was a troublemaker. I would always, when I'm realizing when you look at the art and science of leadership, there's an element around challenging the process and finding ways that you can disrupt for good, you can innovate, find ways that you can push the boundaries in a positive way. And it's always been part of my fabric and DNA as a young person. Just if I see a challenge, let's get to the root cause. Let's see if we can make a difference and really test what the root cause of issues are. So I would test teachers. I would test my school. I'd test coaches. So I was told that, if I don't learn just to behave and not always push against authority, that I wasn't going to make it very far. And I was able to hone in and be able to know how to use it in a positive way. But also making sure that, being outspoken to make sure that I'm outspoken in a positive way and using it for good. And to a certain extent that, that advice still resonated in moving from politics into social services, because I realized that I would see great people that were well-intended that would get into the political process and sometimes just get weighed down with the process. And I found that being in social services that I could not get weighed down in the process, wake up every single day with a singular mission, and that's serving our mission, and not having politics associated with that. So still living testament of that, of using my my voice for good rather than getting myself in trouble, which I still do get in trouble from time to time.
Well, of course. That's part of the fun.
Yeah, exactly.
So that power and that passion that you bring in leading a huge region of Boys and Girls Clubs kids, what are the issues that you all are really working on? Like, what's top of mind that you're working on with the kids?
Yeah, so there's from a global standpoint, there are three things that are on my mind. It's talent, technology, and safety. Ensuring that we can have the safest places for kids, because what we're recognizing, and we've seen this in the news, that there is a lot of bad people out there that are trying to get access to young people, vulnerable young people. And something that's top of mind is making sure that we can do everything that we can to fortify our walls to keep bad people away from our Boys and Girls Club and all kids in our community. So that's kind of foundational bedrock number one. The talent piece is recognizing that we're in the people business, and people say that, but truly we're creating leaders who in turn create leaders inside of our clubs and Boys and Girls Clubs. So we need to make sure that we have top talent in every level in our organization that really understand the true art and science of leadership, so we can develop our young people in a meaningful way. And then as I look at technology, what we've realized, particularly through the pandemic, is that we should be using technology as a true competitive edge to better serve young people, not as a necessity. And so finding ways that we can really reimagine the ways in which that we can serve young people using technology in a revised way, so that we can better serve young people. And that means we're going to partner with people differently. We're going to work with businesses differently. We're going to connect with young people differently. And so those are the top three that are kind of top of mind with me. But this underlined with this pressing need that we're finding post-pandemic. The needs that young people have today are extraordinary. And the interventions and the programs and supports that we provided young people prior to the pandemic have now been elevated. We've always kind of known anecdotally, but finding ways that we can be responsive to those programs, be responsive to the needs through enhanced and expanded programs with enhanced and expanded partnerships, and really focusing in on the interventions that young people need now.
Can you give us a couple of examples of what those programs are, those intervention programs?
Yeah, so one thing that we found is that when you look at Boys and Girls Club's mission to inspire and enable all young people to become productive, caring, responsible citizens, oftentimes we look at I'm a numbers person, so we look at our outcome measures, and kids were progressing to the next grade level. They were graduating from high school. Young people weren't getting pregnant. Kids weren't getting in trouble with law enforcement. But how are we really measuring our mission? And what is a productive, caring, responsible citizen? And if we stop serving young people at 18 years old, or we have an attrition of young people in 6th and 7th grade, how are we really measuring the work that we're doing? So what we've realized is we really need to double down on life and work readiness. So for the last 20 some odd years in Boys and Girls Club nationally, we focus in on academic success, healthy lifestyles, character, and citizenship. Last month, we were able to change our strategic direction nationally, where we now will provide services up to 24 years old, and having job and life skills is a central piece of the work that we do. In essence, just making sure that we can be responsive to the needs. When you look at the enduringness of our mission, we've been around since 1859, but the way we deliver programs in 2024 looks a lot different than 1859, and therefore we don't need to provide the same solutions for yesterday's problems. So that's one piece around the job and life skills. We're also having an element of recognizing the critical need of mental health and mental well-being. In my career, more than 16 years before the pandemic, we had to Baker Act one child. And Baker Act is when a young person is causing harm or has a potential of causing harm to themselves. Since the pandemic, we've had to Baker Act 6 kids in our Boys and Girls Clubs that have looked to cause harm on themselves. We actually had one kid that was in our club that wrote out a plan, had the noose in her backpack and was going to go home. And when we were able to get intervention, and it's a pretty in-depth and traumatic experience, when this happened, she hugged our club director and whispered in her ear, thank you for saving my life.
Oh, wow.
And proud to say this young person's still in our clubs. We're now getting her in our job and life skills, but having a sense of purpose and understanding who they are, and that at our Boys and Girls Clubs, we'll love and support you. So ensuring that we can have better responsiveness, recognition of the trauma-informed practices associated with that, but also making sure that we're taking care of our own employees and we're pouring into their own mental health as well, and knowing how to recognize. Had we not had that staff member that knew the right questions to ask, this young person would not be with us. And when you look at the statistics nationally, it's not getting any better, and we need to do something about it. And then on the academic side, something that we're really focusing in on and revising our programs is around literacy, looking at literacy interventions, because particularly for our young people in elementary school, because you spend the first years learning to read, and then middle school and high school reading to learn. So we need to give them those foundational pieces so they can be better prepared for success in life.
So that's a wide age range then. We're talking about the littlest of the littles in elementary school all the way through 24. How do you go about keeping kids engaged and wanting to come back?
Yeah. So intentional transitions is the way we look at this. So when we talk to young people, particularly middle school and high schools, they tell you they want jobs, they want job skills, and they want the social capital and the connection. So partnering with organizations like Think Big for Kids and finding ways that we can work with similar organizations with similar missions to have those intentional pathways, so there are clear handoffs that we can provide, and that we can work together and really leveraging the best of all program possibilities along the way is a key component. So we look at making sure young people have the foundational pieces in our programs at our club sites. And there's an element of emotional safety and physical safety of young people being in their neighborhoods where many of our sites are located, and then finding transitional programs in the middle school. And then frankly, when we look at high school, maybe the kids don't walk inside of our Boys and Girls Club. Maybe we have some intentional mentoring that we're facilitating, using technology to stay connected with them, giving them the paid internships, and really looking at our data definitions as whether or not that the measure of success isn't necessarily a kid who walks to the door every single day when they're 16 years old, but more or less the written plan they have for the future, and then the steps we're taking to ensure they realize that plan as well.
Do you find that now that you're focusing on kids who are a little bit older, do you find that you're capturing new Boys and Girls Club kids as they, go into middle school and high school, or are these the kids who've been with you all along?
So it's an interesting question because we're finding that it's a great way to recapture kids that we ordinarily may have lost through attrition. But we have a lot of new kids that want to come into our program, but we only have so much bandwidth and ability and slots to be able to serve middle schoolers and high schoolers. So it's this balancing act of making sure that we're not turning our backs on the young people that have gone through our program that we've made tremendous investments in while they're in elementary school, but also being open to and having the ability to serve older young people that may not have had access to a Boys and Girls Club. So when we look at our responsiveness and growth in Boys and Girls Club, not only locally, nationally, we're looking at the unmet need and unmet demand for our services and ensuring that we can really leverage and go to scale and to meet that unmet demand in a more efficient way. So we have the ability to do that, recognizing we use technology in a different way, looking beyond our four walls in a different way to meet that unmet demand.
Freddie, what do you think are some of the misconceptions that people have about these kids and their families who might be underserved or maybe living in poverty?
Yeah, so oftentimes you don't know what you don't know, and conversely, inside of our Boys and Girls Clubs, young people who may be in poverty or in underserved communities may not know what exists outside of their own neighborhood. So it's not a fault of anyone. I say this to qualify my statement that I'm going to make, is that sometimes there are false misconceptions that people are in poverty because they choose to be in poverty. That's not necessarily the case. Sometimes that people don't want to climb out of poverty. Not necessarily the case. Maybe they don't understand how to, or the systems or policies or systemic structures that exist in our country make it prohibitive or more difficult to be able to do that. So we try to find that we can work with partners to bring our programs to their employees. And what we're finding is it truly is a win-win, particularly as we look at as it relates to job and life skills, because businesses oftentimes will say they can grow their bottom line by X if they had access to talent. We have young people who want to have opportunities and a shot, and we can be the facilitator to help bring the two together. And in addition, while there's an economic interest for local companies or global companies making sure they can partner with us with this, there's also a cultural element where we can help bridge the gap. Because when a young person walks into our Boys and Girls Clubs, and the way we equip them, we help them understand how to balance the cultural norms or corporate expectations. And when we do that, we're able to kind of break down the barriers so we can really understand the person for who they are and break down misconceptions that people may have had.
So you have, you talked about your prior to coming back to the Boys and Girls Club that you were in the political scene for a little bit. What role do you think government has or could have just at the local, state, federal level with Boys and Girls Club and other organizations that are trying to help these kids along?
Yeah, there's a saying, and I'm probably going to mess it up, that an ounce of prevention saves a pound of intervention, or something to that effect.
Sounds good.
But for whoever actually made the quote, I apologize for butchering it. But nonetheless, if we can invest in proven programs that have demonstrable evidence around prevention, that it would save so much of our resources long term. And we've spent some time, we recently worked with Florida Tax Watch to kind of quantify what that looks like. And what we found was for every Boys and Girls Club kid that we help progress to the next grade level, we save taxpayers on average more than $9,000 a year. Wow. But whenever you look at the social interventions that are needed when young people and young adults are in poverty and live a life of poverty, for every 100 young people that we help graduate from high school into Boys and Girls Clubs, saves an aggregate of over $29 million to taxpayers. And that's real money. Whenever you look at our scale and our scope and the amount of young people that not only we serve, but also the unmet demand that we may not have the ability to serve. And if we were able to reorient some of the reactionary programs in a more precise way into some of the more preventative programs, that over time that we really can have the ability to save taxpayers money, which then can be redeployed in other areas. And it's not political. I mean, we're helping young people.
So I would imagine a lot of what you have to do is that storytelling and that showing those case studies of almost the proof.
Exactly. In addition to that, there's also policy change as well, because we recognize that if there are barriers into serving young people that are exasperating some of the institutional challenges that we may see, that are perpetuating poverty, that government can and will have a role in helping us manage through those policy changes. Oftentimes when I'm in Washington or Tallahassee, I always tease, during legislative sessions, it's like you see everybody, walking the halls of the Capitol with their hands out looking for money. But really, if we can look at the policy standpoint, that's where we can really move the needle and an ability to really have real change for the young people that we serve, and even adults, in addressing poverty in itself.
So do you, you talked about adults, and it made me think about the parents of some of these kids. So how do you reach out to parents? How do you communicate with parents on the benefit of the value of having their kid join the Boys and Girls Club?
Yeah, so we always say we're one of the community's best kept secrets. You don't see advertisements of Boys and Girls Club saying, join the Boys and Girls Club, we're a great program. Our greatest referral source are schools, law enforcement, and the parents know. We survey our parents annually to really understand what are the things that they like about our programs. And unequivocally, it comes back around it's a safe place for their young people to be. They have access to meals at our Boys and Girls Clubs. They have access to world-class tutoring that helps them academically, but also we're preparing them for the future and giving a warm handoff for our teenagers for job and life skills. And now what we're finding with our parents, that we're putting more time and attention into our job and life skills, the parents are coming back and saying, hey, my son or daughter is talking about this 529 plan that they're setting up. Like, what does that mean? And can I learn more about this? Because they want to be supportive of their kids. And it's a remarkable thing where we're, particularly around financial literacy, that we're providing for our young people, where the parents are, when they pick up their young people, want to get additional information or find worksheets that they can use to support their young people. And that tells us that we may be on to something. Our hope is long-term that as we stay with young people from 18 to 24 years old, that we're able to understand what adult education could look like with our young alumni, and then see how we could perhaps replicate that into other adulthood. When you look at Boys and Girls Club, I talk about our storied histories since 1859. When you look at our logo, it's two clasping hands, and the clasping hands represent the young person connected to the club and the club connected to the community. Mm-hmm. And we really are finding ways that we can work with law enforcement and schools, understand what's happening in the communities, having the kids inside of our clubhouses, and then working with the families and being that conduit. Because oftentimes schools, when we advocate, and this, I'm not being disparaging to any schools or any institutions, but sometimes parents aren't able to be as present in their children's development because they may have to work 2 or 3 jobs. And without having the social understanding or cultural awareness, we may just assume, the parents' kids just don't know. Or if they do show up, they're tired. And so if we can be that advocate, and we're almost an extension of their family to ensure that we're in their corner, and we're going to make sure that no kid slips between the cracks and all kids have access and an opportunity to be successful in life.
So you're really impacting the whole generational family,
Yes, correct.
Yeah. And it's interesting because an organization that, like the Boys and Girls Club, I mean, everybody knows the brand, everybody knows that name, and you all have been around, you said, since 1859. Yeah. And, just the book that you have, I wanted you to share that, one of the famous alumni.
Yeah, so my book is A Hand to Guide Me. It's written by Denzel Washington. Denzel Washington is a club alumni and actually is our national spokesperson and serves on our national board. And when you look at how the Boys and Girls Club helped inspire him to now be one of the most iconic entertainers, is pretty inspiring. But in addition to having access and the ability to hone his craft and someone seeing something in him that he didn't see in himself, you see his character really shine in many instances as a person and as a leader, not only in Hollywood but in our society. We were joking about a story with Denzel. Everyone knows about the Chris Rock and Will Smith incident that happened, but one thing that wasn't really publicized was Denzel Washington, when he saw it, brought them both together to try to mediate and understand the implications of their actions on young people that are looking at Hollywood celebrities, and the importance of making sure that they model the behavior that they want to see in the communities. I think that really underscored what we try to do in Boys and Girls Clubs, and we're proud to have our spokesperson, Boys and Girls Clubs, that wasn't doing on behalf of Boys and Girls Clubs, but just really represented what we want to see in leaders and young people that we produce that come through our Boys and Girls Club programs.
So Freddie, last question for you. If there is one thing that somebody could do to help a kid, what would that be?
It's a great question, and I always say, like, I recently had my 40th birthday. Now I get more emotional, and I also have 3 kids, 2 daughters, and I blame it on that because it's personal for me. one of the most important things that people could do is never turn their back or pass judgment on somebody because of a difference that they may see, and show up for a young person, show up in communities that you may not show up in, and get to know the young people. It does a couple things. It's so inspiring. I remember as a young person, it was so inspiring to see that someone cared about me that didn't have to care about me. And it really makes a difference. And in addition to that, when we look at ways that we can kind of bridge the community and find ways that we can really understand poverty, you can see that these are young people. There are people in underserved communities that just want to be heard, want to be seen, may not know how to communicate their feelings or their experiences. So being there makes all the difference in the world. And I assure you, I tease with my old club director. We used to, I'll get back to make this point. When I wanted to do fun things in the club, but they always said you had to do your homework first. And so I would do my homework, and they gave me more homework, and I would get so frustrated. And my club director said, Freddie, I want you to remember this. I expect more out of you because I think more of you. And because he took the time to understand who I was, and not just some young black boy that got in trouble with law enforcement that just was ultimately going to wind up in jail or in prison, but having the ability to see who I was. So I think being able to show up, be authentic, have compassion, have empathy, it goes both ways. So this club director, we always tease now, one, they don't remember half the things they say. So I think one important thing is hold on to your every word. Kids will hold on to your every word. So be intentional with the words that you use around young people. But I was reminded that being able to pour into me, that they got more out of it than I got out of it myself. So the piece of advice is that while it does good for the community by being able to pour into the community, selfishly, you'll be able to get a lot out of it too. And that's what's going to make our world a better place. Understanding differences, understanding people's perspective and perceptions. And that breaks down barriers where people then are able to trust. When you're able to trust, you can communicate more effectively. When you communicate more effectively, you're less likely to have issues and wars and challenges and all the things that we see that are negative in the news.
Freddie, you are an incredibly busy man, and we really appreciate the time that you've taken with us today. I know I'm leaving more inspired myself, so thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity, and thank you for providing this platform for our community as well.
Our pleasure. Thanks. You.
Thanks for spending your time with Think Bigger Voices. Visit thinkbigforkids.org/podcast to see more episodes, follow our journey, and stay connected.